Well, hello. Welcome to this episode, Prophecy for the Last Hour. Liz McGee. I have another very meaty teaching today. What I'd like to teach on, I'm going to start a series, and I'm going to unflush, or flush out, I guess, in the title of today's teaching, in the subject matter, is called The Kingdom of haSatan. Now, I am trying to get myself and then share it, whoever wants to come into a deeper understanding of our Bible text. I mean, what's going on? You always would say, let's get out of kindergarten. When you first start, and it's a progression of learning. And we shouldn't be afraid of learning because it parallels the way it goes. I mean, when you send your kids to school, they have to first of all learn their numbers and their alphabet. So if you're going to learn how to do math, you have to learn the numbers first. Then you have to learn how to add. Then you can learn how to multiply. Then you can learn, trigonometry. You can go all the way up to calculus and all these crazy formulas today. I mean, but you can't shortcut it. You cannot teach a kindergartner how to do trigonometry. It's just not going to work. The brain can't do that. We don't have that kind of capacity to jump such great distances in knowledge and understanding. So we got to take it one step at a time. So today I want to start to really get a little bit deeper in the understanding of the kingdom of haSatan, how it works, some of the code words, and hopefully enlarge all of our understanding, because at the end of the age, this is truly information the elect need, so that we understand our enemy, our battle. The sons of light are engaged in a very high stakes game against the sons of darkness. Now there's three, so I'm also going to delineate this and teach it from three specific aspects, each one, from the concept of the levels of our soul and the four worlds and the code words to explain this. So if you understand, the house of Judah has been at this for a long time. If you're like me, like an Ephraimite, quote-unquote Christian, coming back into Torah understanding, we have a lot to learn about some very established theological concepts. Because truly, the Bible was written to the choir. These people had a lot of this information, so we need to get it. So I speak a lot in Hebrew terms. I totally bypass the Greek or Latin or anything else. Let's go right into the Hebrew. There's a breakdown of three kind of concepts in which haSatan functions. One is called the evil inclination. We'll talk about that. The other one he's known as the serpent. And the last one we know of, he's Lucifer, right? So these three, they're not, well, the sages will tell us, and it's true, that the evil inclination, the serpent, and the angel of death, or haSatan, are all the same. It's true. But the way the functioning is very specific, and it's something like they say, the devil's in the details. We need more details on this. So there's a phrase in Hebraic understanding called the evil inclination. It's called the Yetzer hara. Okay, the Yetzer hara. Paul alludes to this a lot. You would call it, the sin inclination. What part of our makeup makes us predispositioned? It's almost like as a first responder, sin is so much easier to do than to do what is right. Why is that? And what caused that? So that's a huge subject matter. And again, in an hour, there's no way I'm going to totally flush this out, but to give big picture theology on this. So the evil inclination, the Yetzer hara, is a domain of influence, infiltration, could go all the way into possession, so to speak, that, haSatan would have in us individually. As how does he get into our minds? How does he get into our soul life? How does he get into our body? Because because of the fall, this is the point, we are now in, let's say this, we're in his jurisdiction. So right now I'm in America, and, you know, I'm very well protected per se, the laws of my country, and I'm at peace. Let's just say I go into a warring nation. You know, two nations that are totally in each other's, and there's bloodshed. I mean, there's no way in my physicality there that I can 100% protect myself from the influences going on, the gunfire and the, you know, the people, the actual armies coming against each other. If I'm stupid enough to go into that zone, then I'm going to come under its influence. And this is sort of the understanding with our evil inclination. And why, you know, the best case scenario is always just stay out of that zone, and you don't even have to deal with the crossfire. But unfortunately, because of the fall, we are all under the influence of the evil inclination. Now I know the fall is what would be the original sin. What brought us as highly as these, you know, sons of Elohim, Adamic, you know, Adam and Eve, our ancestors, so to speak, in a state of total bliss and communion with the Father, into a total battle zone. And the thing is, if you read some of the really interesting literature, the books of Adam and Eve, which I do suggest people read because there's some great insight, it gives such a bigger picture of the battle. I mean, Adam was freaked, and Eve, when they realized that they had fallen into a state really and truly into the zone, the dominion, the domain, the airspace, I mean, whatever you want to call it, the country, the land, the field, I don't care, of haSatan. And now they were at his mercy. It's very interesting. So it gives a lot of information. I recommend those books. Now, this sin inclination that we have, this Yetzer, hara, is, now look, let me put this way too. Yahweh knows everything. It says in Isaiah, and I know Christopher, that, you know, he creates evil. He formed the darkness. He created evil. Now that's some pretty heavy theological statements, but you can harmonize this. Yahweh, in his great wisdom, understood the beginning from the end. He made provision for everything. He made provision for the fall. He saw it coming. He made a complete plan to give his people victory over it again, and how to remake the whole thing, a whole new heaven and earth, and get back to a state of bliss. So nothing takes him by surprise. It is a progression. So this evil inclination, so to speak, is a lot of times it's depicted in the scriptures and in a lot of the mystical teachings, because it's mystical teachings, the Jewish mysticism that goes deeper into these understandings. Because again, we are not talking about, you know, you can't see my evil inclination. The only way I can see these things, as Yeshua says, by its fruit. My actions are the only way we can really determine, unless you can tell what influence somebody is operating under. All right. So this is, like, Paul talks about this a lot. He talks about, wretched man that I am, meaning the state of humanity, the things that I should do, I don't do. The things that I shouldn't do, I do. It's so easy to do the baser, less altruistic, less selfish, less ego-feeding. These are all kind of things that wrap themselves around this concept of the evil inclination. All right, so that's our dilemma. But the point is, and this is the point of Yeshua ben Joseph, this is a lot of the plan of salvation, is how to get us free from this influence, how to get us back up to a state of bliss, and how to, and this is like where the whole concept of Torah comes in. Yahweh has made provision, and this is where it's so important. So because there's a left side and a right side. This is a very important theology. I fleshed out a little bit. It's very Kabbalistic. The Zohar really explains all this very deeply. You have a right side of, kind of blessing and obedience. If you're obedient, you get these blessings. You can get everything, all your influence and you're coming from the right side, or you enter what's called the left side, and this is the domain of darkness. This is the domain of haSatan. He can this is his territory. He functions in it. He has free reign in it, and if you enter it, enter at your own risk. All right, because in the middle, and then in the middle is this what separates us from all creation. I'm telling you, even the angels, people, this is the one, is the fact that Yahweh created us with a free will. We get to decide, all right? We get to decide which arena we're going to function in. And it's a moment by moment, thought by thought, breath by breath process. I'm telling you. 1 minute I can be totally blissful and totally obeying Yahweh, and then somebody can say something to me, my husband can say something to me and just trigger me. I'm like, oh, where did that come from? Where did that quick response come from? That wasn't very loving or kind. I mean, we're all very prone to this. And the evil inclination in us must be destroyed. It must be, at best, it must be ignored. We must get the victory over it. This is the whole point of the carnal man, where we need to put to death this part of us that this first responder trigger part of us, and we need to learn, and we can. This is 1 John says that you can cease from willful sin. This is the point, and get the victory over the evil inclination. So you can become mature. So maybe 95% of the time you can stay in the holy zone. Okay, and you're not a willful sinner, and you've got control. So you can, this is kind of what's on and the Torah helps us to do this. The Torah tells us, this is the point of law. What is righteous and what is unrighteous. What is good and what is evil in the eyes of Yahweh. Now, again, it's it's a pretty deep, this is why some sages and, the rabbis spend forever on studying the law, because it's very nuanced. Believe me, we have a very smart enemy, and he'll try every angle in the book. But, and again, down to the no-had laws, and there's some really deep understandings in this, but this is where, laws are made for evildoers, in the sense, if you want to know, if you want to stay on the right side, the side of blessing, that was the whole point of the two mountains. Remember when Israel was going into the land, and Yahweh had the tribes split them up 6 and 6, and one stood on the mountain of blessing, and one stood on the mountain of cursing. If you obey me, you're going to get the blessings. It was all big object lesson. If you disobey me, you're going to get curses, and you're going to come under the influence. So when I say haSatan, believe me, he's not as powerful as people would like to think, and you don't need to be afraid of him. You need just to understand what's going on, where your source of strength and victory comes from, what tools you have at your disposal, and the fact that you have free will. So it's all, you can't blame, oh, my mother dressed me funny or whatever, You have all the power you need inside you to decide which arena you're going to function from. And haSatan, this whole realm was created because it is, in one sense, many levels of meaning and understanding here, it is the policeman. This is where Yahweh gives over people who just don't learn. They just don't get it. They're going to continue to sin, do evil, provoke their neighbor, abuse themselves or do whatever, and they're just going to have to stay in this realm under the influence of curses until they get it. That's what it means to be thrown into jail until you pay the last penny. All right? And this is where we go a lot of times, because we have to be chastened. Sometimes you just don't. A verbal rebuke, don't do that. Doesn't work. I'm the kind of person, I got to learn the hard way. My growing up was kind of difficult. Is because I just wouldn't believe. I wasn't one of those just truly obedient first responder children. And even as a young adult, I really spent a lot of time, quote unquote, in the lifestyle of the pagans, because I just didn't believe that. But that's another whole story. We're not going to go there. But okay, so that's the evil inclination. All right. And keeping Torah is your best learning Torah and developing character. This is why it's so important to develop your quote unquote your character. so that it becomes natural, so that we automatically have a greater reservoir, and it's very physics. I mean, we literally have to develop the grooves in our brain and the syntax is to respond this way. That's why addiction, once you get into once the devil gets you and he gets you so in a sinful lifestyle, it literally is causing pathways, neurological pathways in your brain to be developed, and these things are hard to break. So it's a very deep subject. But then we have what is called the serpent. All right, so that's all inside me and my physics. At this point, this is the whole point of, I really like junk DNA. It's in our DNA. We're wired this way. In Yahweh's foreknowledge, he knew, but he gave us free will. And okay, so now I want to move into the concept of the serpent. Now, this is really interesting, because if you read your text closely, these are different players. The serpent is a very specific word, all right? The serpent was in the garden. We're first introduced to this quote-unquote serpent in the garden, a nakash. It's an angelic order, all right, people? It's not a snake. Now, this is where we can totally get out of your literal, whatever. Let's grow up, get out of kindergarten. This is, I don't know if I should go, all right, I should go quicker, because I got to get into explaining the four worlds and the levels of the soul, how these things operate inside us, because there are a lot of ways modern psychology parallels a lot of this concept that's going on. They just use different words, and I personally believe we all need to go back to, this is part of getting out of Babel, all go back to using the same kind of words and concepts, so we're kind of all can get back on the same page. But the serpent represents, on one level, I will tell you this, they call it the telly. This is the dragon. Well, the dragon, the telly, this represents the Milky Way, all right? We are no longer on Earth. Now, I've told you that there are 10 dimensions, all right? This is a very vast cosmos, and it just isn't domain. It's not just what you see that's out there. There's a ton of places you can't see with your physical eyes. I mean, I'm sure if you're here, you're totally on that page. There are metaphysical, there are meta levels to this thing. But the serpent is in the scriptures is used a lot of times. This is why in the Maseroth, in the heavens. So what I'm saying is, now let me try to do this. I've done some teachings, and a very important teaching people should listen to is one I have on the gods of the nations, the 70. There's 70 lesser Elohims, the gods. There's a principle in Judaism, well, it's a truth that is there, they understand. And I have explained this to people many times. This is such a fundamental understanding. There is always, because Yahweh makes an archetype, and it's like a stamp. He stamps the same kind of thing. He does the same kind of thing, no matter if he's making a blade of grass or if he's up there, in the throne room with the heavenly angels. Thrones, all right? There is always a container, and there is always what fills the container. So we have, this gets into the soul lives. So the serpent is the influence. It's the origination. It is the place. It is the domains where like quote unquote, and haSatan is just, it's like a title. Okay, so there are many Satans, okay? It's a title for this whole domain, this whole concept, haSatan. He is the adversary, okay? That's where we don't war against flesh and blood, okay? We're warring against infiltrations in our bodies, our minds, our souls, and our spirits. And these all have places of origination. All right, nothing just poofs out of nowhere, and it's very organized and it's very orderly. So I mean, if I go from here and I go down to South America, I mean, I'm not going to go there by way of China. There's very specific things are very delineated. Okay, but let me just say, so the Milky Way, there's a concept called the Maseroth. Everything, and this even came to me today. I thought, all right. we know that the sun, moon, and stars tremendously influence, and this is their point, for signs and for seasons. These words can be understood on so many levels. I mean, not just the feast of Israel kind of thing, but everything in its season, all right? So even under the concept of the 4 seasons, it is the Mazroth, it is the sun, the moon, and the stars that the influence for our seasons is coming down to us or influencing. The place, so in other words, we know that the moon affects the tides. A lot of times this is the concept of, so even just sticking on quote unquote the earth's influences, and the earth is set up, let's say, like a clock. It's a very sophisticated clock, a creation, and it runs. If it was left alone to do its thing, it's made beautiful, it is made good, and it would run like a charm, and it would be beautiful and bountiful and all the time. What runs the earth is this domain called the dragon, the telly. But it is, for us, it is the Milky Way, all right? This is why the ancients, they were so into the stars, the sun, moon, and the stars, and the planets, because they truly understood, and it's true, these heavenly bodies emit influence, waves, energy waves, light waves, or, what is it, microwaves, all the gamma waves, all these unseen waves of influence, all right? Many of them originate in that sphere, all right? And there's a couple of spheres. There's a couple of heavens that contain this whole concept of the serpent, all right? Now, so let me just, and it's called the Mazroth, and we are individually influenced by what is called the mazal of these influences. So in other words, it's very organized. Nothing is outside of Yahweh's domain. Like, he didn't make a plan. It's like he didn't make a mazal. So he was very careful to make grass seeds, put them in the ground, and give them a season to grow that was determined and ruled over by these heavens, these spheres, these dimensions, whatever. Then above that, see, because then we're getting into, there's always a container. So consider that now the container for the level that's above it. And the level that's above it is where you get into the kind of Lucifer, all right, of this powerful heavenly archangel being. Now it gets really deep. I'm not going to go. There's about a couple layers above this thing. I'm not going to go. For intents and purposes, Lucifer as a fallen entity, because he is fallen. Now this is just really, I have to throw that out, because, I believe, and it's true, the Milky Way is not the only galaxy. It is not the only, if you look in a telescope, and you look in a telescope, so I don't think it's made up per se. There are many heavenly bodies out there. There are many groupings or clusters, and they probably have some influence. But the thing is, when Lucifer fell from heaven, I think we're talking about levels of influence. I have to throw something in, a rabbit trail here, but it's very germane and important to understand. I was reading, because getting the Hebraic understanding of these words makes all the difference in the world between near and far. When something is near and something is far, it doesn't necessarily mean distance, okay? A lot of times what it's referring to, things that are near, are things that are very alike. They're very similar, so that makes them close to each other, all right? So my sister and I are close to each other, even in the sense that we're physically, she lives in Florida, I'm here, but we're near to each other in the sense that we're in the same family, we come from the same set of parents. There's a lot of we grew up together in the same house. There's a lot of similarities with us, okay? So we're near each other. They're kin. This is the concept. Your closest of kin, all right? Something that's far away means it's something that's very different. So, Yahweh says, I'm not like you. well, how does it, you know, your ways are not my ways. You know, his ways are not like ours. They're very different. All right. He's got a whole different set of rules he runs by, whole different thing. You know, he's doing stuff that our minds cannot even fathom. All right. So he is in that's in one level why he is described as being far away. But at the same time, there is aspects of Elohim in the text that he is also very close to us. So he is closer than our very breath, even though his ways are way beyond ours. So this concept of near and far has to be understood a little more Hebraically like this, all right? So because haSatan, like, so I was just talking about Lucifer, which would be the origination of, in the rulership, the ruler who was put over the left side, these influences, these dark energies. And I guess today the best way to put it would really, because we are talking about energies. And let me say this too, none of this stuff is made up. See, the ancients, none of that stuff it's all very real. The earth is alive. The Mazzaroth, the heavens declare the glory of Elohim. These are populated with living, sentient beings. This is why, you know, people accuse me of being mystical, but there's a lot of information that we need to get, the college level, we need to get understanding here, all right? These are living entities. They were created, but they have very specific jobs. They report in, so to speak, to Elohim. They have dominions of influence. That's why they're called magistrates. They're called judges. They're called kings. They're called principalities. They're powers. These are very primordial, powerful intelligences that do things. All right. Now, so Lucifer, when he fell down into his influence was only as far as the Milky Way. At that point, I don't think he was allowed to have any more influence in any more of the heavens, no more mucky muck. And then, so that's his first level where he was cast down. From there on, the serpent, that level, he runs. And this is well, and this has a lot to do with the understanding of Yeshua, why he had to come and defeat the influences and get, especially the mixed multitude, the Gentiles, the lost sheep, those who were totally under the influence, lock, stock, and barrel, and really owned in a certain kind of inheritance of the gods of the 70 nations, because that's what I was starting to say. This whole world of the dragon, the Telly, the Milky Way, the Mazar, because let me tell you, those ancients knew the heavens. They didn't, okay, maybe they didn't call it the Milky Way. They called it the dragon, all right? It's, and in this way, and a dragon is a beast. See, what we have to understand is how they were using these words. The thing about an angel is, even though they're powerful, living, sentient beings, they do not have a lot of what we have. They do not have the free will, per se, that we have, in the sense, oh, it gets very deep, that they can change, but they can, and this gets into why we are going to judge angels. What I'm trying to get to is this concept of why we will judge angels, because these 70 archons, they're called archons in the Gnostic or whatever, who are all, you know, they were put there by Elohim. And the big question is, and I know that the rabbis and sages don't totally agree, and I've been trying to figure this out forever, whether this is like, are they good or are they bad? And I think this is why we're going to judge angels, because like anything else, and this is in Enoch, it says this very clearly, that one of the reasons why the angels are going to come under such a severe judgment is because many of these angels went way beyond what they were tasked to do, especially the angels of chastisement, the angels on the left side that are under haSatan's jurisdiction. So let me put it this way. If you do something really bad and it goes up before the heavenly court and they decide, well, you know, and let me tell you what, it's not, you know, praise Elohim. That's why we have an advocate up there, Yeshua. But it comes down, you know, it's determined, you know, she really did do that. She really, by her own free will, without telling, she really did do that heinous thing, whatever it is, okay, and she has to pay the last one, all right? they're given over to the chastening angels. This is the whole history of why many times when Israel was chastised, went into exile, the 70 years of Babylon, they're in huge exile now. But this all has to do with coming under the influence of these. That's why Israel now, both houses actually are under the influence of these 70 archons, especially. And the trick is, how do you get out from under the influence? So this is where Yeshua comes in, the whole story. And this is where doing Torah, two sides sort of the same coin, will get you free of that influence, all right? And translated and working back under the kingdom of Elohim. Because like I said, there's two kingdoms. There's one on the left side, there's one on the right side, all right? So this Lucifer, who is also known as the angel of death, Samuel, all right, that's another one of his codes. Samuel, Lucifer, he has this tremendous influence. So in other words, Lucifer fell because he was cast out of heaven, which I believe is the high heavens, which I'm going to get into the whole four worlds and the five levels of the soul and how it all relates to each other. But I wanted to flesh out, those are very important nuances and distinctions to understand. So when we read our texts, you can kind of get into the mind of the prophet or the writer and see, okay, I see what they're talking about, the evil inclination. Paul is trying to give, how and why Torah and the law is so important, and how now, even like Paul isn't teaching against Torah. He's saying now we have access to a higher form of influence to help us keep the Torah on a much higher level. So not just through it, but it actually in our cleaning out into our mind. I mean, this is very deep. There's a lot of levels. So now I'll get into the soul life. So it has to be understood against the makeup of the four worlds. All right. Which one should I do first? Here, I've taught on this. And it's very important people understand our makeup. There's 5 levels of soul life, and soul is because just to understand, I'm way more going to touch on this a lot than a physical body. All right, a lot of programs running, inside, and the Hebrews totally understood this. There are Hebrew words that are very, very specific, down to the letter that makes up that word, the root letters, down to the vowel points, down to the cancellation marks. That's why Hebrew is so precise, and that's why it was so insanely protected, and the transmission was like, oh my gosh, if you got one little yod wrong, you had to throw out the whole text. Why? Because there's so much meaning packed into the way this all goes together, and if you understood it, all right, you can't make a mistake, because, you just can't afford to make a mistake. And this, all right, so anyways, we have what's called our Nefesh soul, our animal soul. This is where the evil inclination resides. There is a Hebrew word, Nefesh. When he made everything, all the living beings in Genesis 1, which is really a story of creation, of making all the sentient living beings that populate this whole creation, because behind every living being, this is what I was trying to say, has a container. All right, and I just can't emphasize that enough. So we have an earthly body, our treasure, our spirit, so to speak, is contained inside an earthly body. There's the whole point of the tabernacle, the whole point of the Holy of Holies, where you could get into a zone where you could actually get out of the physicality of the container, the physical world, and you could actually get higher and ascend and connect to the higher levels. All right. So we have a Nefesh soul. Now this is where the evil inclination is housed, in the sense of, because of the fall, we came under the influence of the angel of death. Our bodies entered into the cycle of decay, of death. This is something that has to be understood about the physical world. The physical world runs on death. It's a cycle, and everything renews itself. I mean, everything teaches us that, and it's not in and of itself bad. I mean, no plant lives forever. It has a season. Right now, we're entering winter in my hemisphere. Things are dying left and right. I watch my vegetable garden just totally wilt away. It's so sad. Death has entered. these plants. This is the natural process of things. It's all part of, it's a great plant. The plant dies, it disintegrates, we throw it in the compost, it breaks down, all those nutrients, go back into the soil, and it's a constant recycle. So it's really a good thing. But we human beings, as sons of Adam, as sons of Adam, or sons of Elohim, like that, we were supposed to be above that cycle. All right, we're supposed to live forever in a state of bliss. We weren't supposed to die. Well, hello. All right, so this is the first level. It entered us in a very genetic level. So through the serpent, we came under the influence of this cycle that happens from the Mazra of our, all right? It influences these cycles, all right? So this lower level animal soul life, which we share with the animals, we have a Nefesh, and married to it, so to speak. So the Nefesh is sort of our soul that has the coding, the DNA that makes the programs, that makes me a human with a physical body, and also the programs that are needed to keep that physical body, as long as it's allotted down here to live for 70 years, eating and drinking and procreating and working and doing the things that it has to do to sustain itself. That's all kind of part and parcel. So the evil inclination is there, but the point is, a lot of it is good. I mean, this is why it's, there's nothing wrong with making, growing beautiful food that's organic and good, and making a fabulous meal and eating it and then going through the whole cycle. I mean, this is all good. Yahweh said it is good, all right? But we need to keep everything in proportion, everything within boundaries. That's why gluttony, that's where sin comes in, where you get out of excess. And it gets into the whole, the 7 deadly sins, greed and lust, and, oh my goodness, avarice and immorality and violence and all these things. These are where we get out of control with these appetites and these passions, and we do great harm to ourselves and to each other. The greatest thing is, this is always been Jewish. This has always been, do unto others as you had them do unto you, the golden rule. You can state it from the negative or the positive. Don't do to other people what you don't want them to do to you, or do to other people what you would have them do to you. Okay, it's not rocket science. So you have it, but then we have the Ruach. The Ruach is a very important, because when you understand the levels of the soul, it correlates, it functions from specific worlds of influence. When I say worlds, I just mean dimensions. I mean spheres. You can go down. It's down in quantum mechanics. From the smallest unseen realms to what we can visibly see of the sun, the moon, and the stars. All right. It's there's a lot of, and like I said, near and far. Okay. Now, so anyway, so we have this. Let's call it this way. Let's do it this way. And this is things you can, I'm giving you a credit. This is why I read the Zohar. Really fleshes it out. Go on some really good Jewish websites that are Kabbalah friendly, like Chabad. Get some articles about the levels of the soul. Read about the evil inclination, the Yetzer, hara. Read about the Nefesh, so the Ruach. And we're getting into the Neshama. So anyway, so the world of physicality, of materiality, everything that in this lower level that we can see, taste, touch, and feel, that influences us from, and there are animal levels to this thing, there's vegetable levels to this thing, there's mineral levels to this thing. There's 4, I can't remember, animal, mineral, vegetable, and I guess us, human. So there are classifications in this thing, and each one builds on the other. All right, so this world of physicality in our soul is where our Nefesh, it's the programs we need down here. It's called the Nefesh soul life that keep me rooted to earth, keep me doing everything I need, like I said, to live my allotted 70, 80, 90 years. All right, the world, it's related to the world. It's called the world of Asiyah. All right, it is the world of physicality. And unfortunately, we live today, This is what it is in the Western secular mindset that has totally infiltrated the church, especially the evangelical and many of the mainline Protestants. That's it. They don't really want to go deeper, understand the metaphysical worlds after that. But science keeps, that's their domain, and they have sort of, this is why we're under the influence, you can tell today, in my opinion, of haSatan in this whole area, because he won't let us get out of it. He doesn't want you to discover the other realms and dimensions and shut him down in those other levels and dimensions, but we need to, all right? The other cultures, other times past, they totally had this understanding, and it was a given, and they taught it. The people grew up in the understanding of it, and you know, they got it. They weren't afraid of the other worlds. It's why angels, and there's so much in the mythologies of the world, they're dealing with these other dimensions, and they don't have a problem with it. You know, in the sense of, you know, some use it for evil, some use it for good. I mean, it's pretty deep. But anyways, the world of Asiyah, the lower world, the world from which our Nefesh soul life is rooted, grounded, functions, all this. You go up, all right, into this world called the world of Yetzer. All right, these dimensions, and these relate to Sephiroth. This is a realm of influence into these. This is the astral world, the astral plane. This is a place today where this is where psychology, we think it's new. There's nothing new under the sun, people. All of the psychological jargon and the understandings of the beginnings of our which is called our Ruach. This is where you get the concept of the Ruach, which is a word that's related to air, to wind, to the heavens. It's this astral dimension where we're now into this world of our soul and our emotions. All right, this is a very important world. It's the next level up, so it has a propensity for good or for evil. My emotions, right? I can enjoy beautiful times of worship and connectedness and emotionally being so in love with Yahweh, you know, and then I can be consumed by, you know, envy or jealousy or passions of, you know, getting into hatred or a root of bitterness. I mean, this is why, you understand, the left side and the right side, wretched man that I am, who's going to free me? Who's going to deliver me from this, you know, this cycle, this, so you can understand, but this whole world, the world of Yetzer, corresponds to this concept of the astral world, our Ruach. Now, the thing about our Ruach, we are given, even animals have a certain amount of Ruach, all right? But they don't have the amount of Ruach that we have, the access of it, because your Ruach, that is, it's sort of your barometer. The way the sages talk about it is the Ruach is, so in other words, if I enter into a state of meditative connectedness with Yahweh Elohim, and I begin to meditate upon his ways and begin to bring his word into my mind, into my heart, into my emotions, and let it do its work. This is the Logos now coming, you know, and maybe convict me of sin, maybe convict me of some emotional, you know, that was really not, I really need to forgive that person and not hold a grudge and not, you know, I need to get free, like, or, you know, I just want to meditate on the beauty of the creation and just give nothing but praise and glory. See, this is our Ruach. So if you're Ruach, so you determine, you're in control. This is the other thing. They say that the captain and the ship, you're the captain of this thing. You are what you think. If you're Ruach, if you're allowing your emotional, your Ruach spirit to bring you up and to get glimpses of Elohim and to want to know him, that Ruach will bring you up. All right, that's its whole point. That's its job, to go through the heavens, to bring you to the high heaven. All right, to bring you, you know, remember I said, in one sense, Yahweh is far away because his thoughts are not our thoughts. So I got to get my thoughts on his page, so to speak. If you do that, the Ruach will bring you up. Conversely, if you want to just feed your Nefesh soul with your Ruach, in other words, so this is where the negative passions come in. If I want to just fester in that root of bitterness and let that thing grow and just bring me down to a level of complete negative energy. And again, this is thoughts or energy. Thoughts are real living, you know, this is something we don't understand. Living things, you know, they have, talking about a mind of their own. They know what they're doing. They know what you're thinking. So if that Ruach knows, well, she's thinking great, you know, she's really thinking beautiful thoughts, let's take her to that realm. That's you know what? Okay, they have to do. See, this is a world of angels. This is what they have to obey what you're telling it. So in other words, so if you're steeped in negative, dark, evil, hurtful emotions, you know, to yourself or other people or to God, you know, Elohim, you know, some people just get in a state of complete hatred for, you know, blame him for everything and not understanding all this, how it, and refusing to get wisdom and understanding so they can figure out what's going on instead of blaming. Your Ruach will do that. It'll bring you down. All right. So this is very important to understand the Ruach in people. All right. And you know, animals do have a certain amount of Ruach, and that gets into a whole nother area that I can't even touch on. But as they're friends, there's a lot of intelligence. There are certain animals that are very intuitive. I'll just tell you a quick story. My cousin was just telling me, you know, he had a cat. He was very close to his mom and dad. When his dad, especially his dad passed, and he inherited his dad's cat, Clementine, and he was very attached to the cat. It was a connection, But Clementine just passed away just this last couple of weeks, and it was very sad. And he, you know, it was a connection with his dad, and he had very bonded with the animals. We really bond with animals because they're. Anyways, he says one day he had to put the cat down, and he buried the cat in the backyard, and he was very nervous overnight because, you know, they say to bury, you know, an animal very deep down so that animals don't come around and dig it up because they can sniff it out and all this kind of stuff. But he said he woke up in the morning and he looked at, and there was this huge buck deer out in his yard right over where the cat had been buried, right over the fresh dirt. And he was like, first like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? Because the deer would not normally dig up. That's not what they do. They don't eat other flesh and stuff. So, but it was just an interesting, it was like he felt a connection, like that the animal was telling, look, we understand, you know, I'm here to pay homage from my buds out there in the forest. We know that you've lost your companion here, your connection with your dad, and I'm paying homage. I mean, in a lot of ways, and this is where a lot of more indigenous cultures, they're much more connected to this kind of understanding. We're way too sophisticated, you know, here in the West. All right, but I just want to tell you that there's a lot that goes on. Oh my gosh, I got to get through this. So we're into this astral world, the world of Yetzer. The next world up that relates to our soul life and its realm of influence. And this is, people, where you got to get. This is where you need your Ruach to bring you to the supernal level so you can get plugged back in, get connected, get born again. Because this is where, you know, the astral and the physical and the world of Yetzer and the world of Asiya are really under the influence of the kingdom of haSatan. Okay, the deck is really stacked against us there. We have to work hard. That's why it says to work out your salvation. It takes a lot of work sometimes to get free, to get to a place. Okay, so in the next level, to where the world of Bariah, which is the world of creation, which is the world of the higher soul, our Neshama. This is so critical to understand, because I will tell you something, you know, I don't want to get to it, but the immortality of the soul, when you get into the soul, these programs, they're living entities. See, the death is here in the body dies because it's part of the cycle. But the astral worlds that are in a cycle too, they don't die in the sense like the body dies. They go to different places. This explains, again, in Hebrew philosophy, you know, you get your different levels of you know, Sheol and Gehenna, or the lower worlds, you know, quote unquote hell, what that's all about. Because the parts of us, our soul life, which is a part of us, all right? This is, everybody has their, goes to places upon release from the body. And this is another huge area, but you can't think of it as it dies. It's made up of immortal substances, and immortal means these are they're not part of the cycle yet until they get thrown into, if you get so unlucky to be thrown into the quote unquote the lake of fire, the second death, that's it, that final cessation of you, all your composite parts, then, you know, I'm sorry, then yeah, it's lights out. But because this soul is really made up of light, these lower levels, there's energy, there's real divine light and energy. It doesn't die. You can't kill life. Hey, I mean, Chai, Lahaim, I'm trying to get the right, Haim, life. You can't kill it. All right, that's the whole point. All right, so you got to get to this level of Beria, which is this level of the higher, and this is where, again, this gets into the whole point of Yeshua as our Savior. He's like the gate, he's the door, he's the vessel, he's the way up out of this whole cycle of death and everything. He will take us. He said, you'll be with me in paradise, in a place that's above it all, until the Olam HaBa. Oh my gosh, I can't wait until we can get into the Olam, the world to come, because he is making, and I have to make this point, a new heaven and a new earth. Because this part of us, the Neshama, only a born-again saint, only someone who has really made a connection back up to the soul life of the supernal worlds, the higher worlds, what was cut off in the tree of life. That was the part he had to sever. He had to make a disconnect there. Otherwise, we would have lived forever in this cycle of death. I mean, this would not have been good. All right. So this all can be really understood in a real, to me, very clinical of metaphysical physics. There's no reason not to believe it. It all makes sense. We see it, and many cultures testify to this truth too. Also, the soul level. The Neshama, which is related to the word breath, this is because when he breathed into Adam, Adam is the only creation that was actually breathed into. This is because he received this Neshama soul, these higher processes, higher mind, they influence from the higher dimensions. Parts of him was literally made up of the container, so to speak, in the programs of the higher dimensions, all right? The higher consciousness. This is eternal, all right? These realms, this is the point of, at this point, this is our eternal. That's why you want to get born. You want to get up into this place, sort of a safe zone, as he is remaking and he's making a new heaven and a new earth. That where and eventually it will totally eradicate haSatan, the evil inclination. That's why he says that the sun, the moon, and the stars are going to be rolled up like a scroll. All of that's lower level stuff that's very evil, infiltrated, a lot of viruses, a lot of angels and things that are functioning and doing way beyond what they were ever tasked to do. And this is why it says that Israel will have paid for her sins 7 times over. I mean, if you really study, oh my gosh, the history of Israel under the different exiles, it has not been pretty. They've been punished way more than any of the other nations, and that's always was one of the complaints of the prophets. You know, okay, that's why we're going to judge these angels. So once you get into this world of Beria, this higher places of being, so they call it higher consciousness, you're in the safe zone, all right? And so when the Olam HaBa, which is the world to come manifest, which will start with the millennial reign, okay, we're saying we'll be locked up, and it says that's where we're promised. That will be our first manifestation, our first taste of, you know, living free, back in a blissful state, close to our Elohim, you know, working without all these other negative influences. All negative energy will be put down and put away. So this is, and then there is a whole world above that. Because I said in Hebrew understanding, there's 5 levels of the soul. Now, there are levels that most of us will never attain in this lifetime. I mean, there is 2 places left. One, actually, I don't have and I should teach on this, but in another time, because I forget their names, of these 2 levels. But this is where you're like, your messiahs come from, because a lot of this is all origination of soul, all right, different levels of the soul. But there is a level, the eternal, it's untouchable, this is the high heavens, this is where almost the concealed, this is where our heavenly mother and our heavenly father, Chokmah and Bina, this is where the true brains of the operation, the real, this is where Elohim is totally above and beyond the influence, and way above the Milky Way, way above influence of anything. This is where it's only, nothing can come into his presence. This is the concept, you're just holy, righteous, divine beings that just praise him forever. This is where it's an untouchable zone, all right? And unfortunately, Israel, this is what they were cut off of, all right? They had entrance to this through Mount Sinai. This gets into the really deep stuff of the covenants, and this is what the true elect saint of Elohim, a real Sadiq, a real elect, someone who totally can cleanse themselves even in this life, can enter into and can prepare their soul for inheriting this level. All right, because basically you're going to, in the world to come, in the Olam HaBa, in the new heaven, in the new earth, the new Adam came in, the new cosmic Christ, whatever you want to call it, we're all going to kind of be where we, my new thing is like game of musical chairs, when the music stops and you got to find a chair, that's where you are. That chair is your level. That's yours. That's for all eternity. That's kind of scary. That's kind of sobering. So in my mind, until Messiah and this thing's wrapped up, you better, in my opinion, what else are you going to do except try to get yourself up, transformed as high as you can. And there is a level there. This is where, and it talks about where Yeshua, where the souls, the Messiah comes from. All right. This is they know no sin. They're totally above everything. That's why he had to really come all the way down. This makes a lot of sense when you read a lot of the apocryphal literature. And, it talks about Yeshua had angels and he had to go through different gates and go through different levels, and he almost had to be in the skies, and there had to be code word, because, see, we're in a war, and it's very key, but he came from a place totally beyond all this stuff in his soul level, and he had to take on flesh. He took on this garment, this container that we have to live in, to die the death of man. I mean, this stuff is really, it's really deep, but it all makes sense. This all is a systematic theology that is true, that is what we can know, which is really in the Hebrew scriptures. And unfortunately, we need to get back to, the root system. That's what I'm all about. We have to get back to having the understanding in our Torah of unchangeable theologies. All right. I'm Lord, I change how. There's many things that are established. We don't need to make them up. We don't need to reinvent. You don't have to make up a whole new theory called morphic resonance to explain this stuff. It's already very established and explained in our Torah. So once you have, and that's a realm, as I said, the highest realm, where when he was cast out, and even in the world of Berea, when it talks about he was cast out, he does not have access to the divine council, to these upper rooms, unless, I know that there's that verse in, is it Psalms, where he, in the council of the elders, in the time in the heavenly, Satan appears, and, Elohim says, have you seen my servant Job down there? And they have this, so I'm pretty sure he has to be invited or escorted, So in other words, if a prophet has to be escorted by angels to get up to these higher levels and be very else, believe me, haSatan does too. He can't just, all right, so let me go into this now that I've kind of painted this picture. You have to understand the different soul lives, where they emanate from, what their primary place of influence is, and what the quote-unquote antidote for it is. But this is why there is war in the heavenlies, because ultimately haSatan is a principality, and the serpent, these are principalities, these are powers, these are sentient beings with intelligence that operate way outside of our physicality plane. Now, that being said, do we know there are evil people? I'm not so much dealing today with evil people, the wicked, who are totally given over to and under the influence of the evil inclination and of haSatan, of the kingdom of haSatan. All right, but I'm trying to explain all this so that we can understand how to get free, why it's important to get free. But let me say this: there is, so to understand these code words and how it's used, so we know what it's referencing. So Lucifer is cast down. His only influence now is in these lower levels. He is called the dragon when we're talking in the Milky Way or the celestial heavens that are right over us. Okay, and it's his only place of influence. Now the snake. See, this is why it became that this Nefesh, this angelic order, this thing became a snake when it was cursed. You're going to be likened to a snake. And it's not, again, we're not talking about, we're just using the concept of a snake to paint a mind picture so we can kind of understand what happened. All right. So this dragon, this telly, this angelic entity that could transverse of the heaven was now becoming a snake. The serpent was becoming a snake. In other words, the serpent's influence, the influence that was totally now directed only to earth. It could no longer turn its influence up higher into the higher heavens. Okay, it could only go down. Its influence down. He became a snake because a snake is very low to the ground. This is the point. They slither there. So the whole point of using a snake is because if you study it out, its whole persona, how it functions and operates in hiddenness and in lower parts of the earth, and it comes out and bite, all this, the bite of the serpent, full of venomous things. These are all used to explain to you how this kingdom of haSatan works in the lower dimensions, the lower realms. So that's why he's called a snake on earth. And his influence, we know that, with Eve, and this is again another point, with Eve and the Nefesh in the story, there was a bloodline, there was a whole hybrid, species form now that came strictly under the influence of the snake, the Nefesh, which, and it wasn't until, that's why there's such a difference and a gulf. It says between the sons of Adam and the sons of Cain, and you have Seth, 120 years later, the first Adamic, just Adam and Eve, pure Adamic stock. This is why in the ages they understood this. They kept track of the bloodlines. The bloodlines were very important. Now today, at the end of the age, the mixed multitude, we're also mixed up. It doesn't, we've lost track of that, but conceptually, theologically, psychologically, philosophically, we need to really still understand this because it's still a very important part of understanding the story. All right, and why Yeshua, at the end of the age, the last 2 days, the point is we're now working our way into this whole quote-unquote mixed multitude. But inside the mixed multitude, the Gentiles, it's like tons and tons of the house of Israel and the house of Ephraim. So it's a pretty big story. But the last thing I have to touch on here in this, the kingdom of haSatan, again, you have to understand from another point of view, another set, and it's also called, if you want to look it up, in the Sitra Archa. It's another Hebrew term for the kingdom of haSatan, and it's fascinating because there's a lot of different, and it begins to make sense how the word uses a lot of these things like the worm, and like I've talked about the snake and different things, and beasts and wild beasts, a lot of these words that get plugged in, again, describing areas, dimensions of origination and influence, all right? But there's the masculine and feminine. Masculine, the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine, the duality, there's a dualism going on. There are masculine energies and feminine energies. This is a big part of the story. But in terms of the players, again, the names biblically that are given to describe this dualistic interplay that is going on between fallen demonic energies, fallen masculine, and fallen feminine energies, demonic energies, and righteous from the righteous, blessed, holy, still, pure, unprofane, unmixed, clean energies of masculine and feminine energies. All right, and again, this gets a lot of this is in psychology, in our minds, our left brain, our right brain, but been through a lot of this stuff. But Samuel is a code word for this whole domain of the Milky Way. Samuel, the archangel, the angel, where his dominion and is known as Baal. He's a god, small g. This is the point. His influence is such that he's a god. All right, small g, Elohim. Lilith is his counterpart. So he always takes a male and a female. I mean, that's the archetype. He made them male and female. Well, this is this is a truth. Asherah, this is where a lot of so in Old Testament pagan and pagan, there's probably, these people are really worshiping, enter into relationship, engaging in courting and using the influence and the energies of these angelic realms and sentient beings. Baal and Asherah, Samuel and Lilith. All right, in Revelation, the beast and the whore. All right, the dragon, so these are some of the words that are used to describe demonic realms. And then on the flip side, you would have in the separate, you had Chokmah and Bina. I ran through this, our heavenly mother, our heavenly father. Wisdom and understanding from the upper realm. So there's always a dichotomy. You can choose you this day who you're going to serve. Where's your influence going to come from? So last, I just want to go through a couple, and I've been through a lot of these, where they will, what's behind a lot of the verbiage, the language in the text. One of them, let's say, the slave girl who is behind the millstones, Exodus 11:5. When you understand this whole world that I'm talking about, and this gets into the different covenants that Paul is talking about, you know, Hagar and Sarah, the mother of us all. He's talking about different realms of influence. If you're going to stay under the realm of the Mazal of Hagar, you know, you're still a slave. You're a slave. Or if you can get free, you get your Neshama born again to Sarah, to the mother who is above. All right, this is what this represents the two covenants on Sinai. Moses came down, you know, he had a whole, they could have gotten right to the chase and gotten right out from under the influences of this world. Oh my gosh. But no, when he came down, the mixed multitude, the whole story of the golden calf, he broke the tablets. I mean, it was done for that time. And he had to go back up, and he got, you know, the covenant of Hagar, Torah. So these are things to understand. This is what these words in description are painting, these understandings. So the slave girl who is behind the millstones is talking about, is a word that's describing, like, if you are in the heavenly realms, if you're talking about this thing in some way, you know, it grinds, these cycles. This is what the point, what Ezekiel saw, these wheels, these spheres that are moving, these cycle grind. Oh my gosh, it's like grinding a millstone. It goes around, 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 okay? The slave girl who is behind. So in other words, and this is why the whole point of the slave girl, harlotry, the harlot, the adulteress, the adultery. This is where, you know, the snake, and these are all ways of talking about the demonic influences. All right, so they're talking about, you know, don't breach her fences. In other words, that's why they put a fence. The rabbis put a fence around Torah. If you keep Torah, you'll be safe. You know, I say, stay in the yard. See, I got a fence behind me. This is one of my watercolors. All right, if you stay in the boundaries, in the delineated fence, you're in a safe zone. All right, you can by and large bystep the influence of these evil mazals, and you can receive blessing. But if you get outside, or they try to breach the fence, so in other words, we put fences up, you know, but that's somebody's constantly trying to get in. Knock down our fences, our defenses, see, don't let this happen. And this is a lot. All right, so the last one, you know, we know that there's demons, we know that there's fallen angels, we know that there is again, I'm going to flesh out more now into some of these, more the entities. I did this whole teaching also on angels. You should listen to it. Listen to the teaching I have on the 70 gods of the nations. This is so paramount to understand. And these are those who are going to get cast down. Their influence at the end of the age. This is all part of the wrap up. Oh my gosh. It's going to be pretty crazy. Stay tuned. So I just want to say, you know, shalom and blessings. That's enough meat for today, I think. And let's just have no fear. Perfect love casts out fear. But wisdom and understanding will draw us nearer to our Father. When you're near to your Father, you feel you are safe. All right? You know, when you get into your parents' arms, you know, you're safe from the world. So let's remain there. Shalom and blessings.